What if a dog could detect emotional abuse? Meet Duke, a German shepherd who protects a housekeeper from her cruel millionaire boss. His extraordinary gift exposes hidden truths and transforms lives forever. Where are you watching from? Subscribe now. Martha Wilson clutched her worn leather purse as she approached the imposing iron gates of Oak Ridge Manor. At 45, her weathered hands told the story of a life spent in service to others. Deep crow's feet framed eyes that had witnessed both joy and hardship in equal measure. Her graying hair was pulled back in a practical bun, and despite the early summer heat of Connecticut, she wore a cardigan over her simple dress, a habit born from years of working in air-conditioned hotel rooms. The estate sprawled across 5 manicured acres in Greenwich, one of America's wealthiest zip codes. As the gates parted, Martha's heart raced. This position with Dr. Richard Blackwell, CEO of Blackwell Medical Group, a prestigious chain of private hospitals spanning the East Coast, could finally provide the stability she desperately needed after being laid off from her hotel housekeeping job of 15 years. "You must be the new housekeeper," said a young security guard, checking her ID against his tablet. "Mr. Blackwell is expecting you. Follow the main drive to the house." Martha nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. "Thank you, sir." As she walked the winding cobblestone path, Martha felt eyes on her. Turning slightly, she spotted a magnificent German shepherd watching her intently from beneath a towering oak tree. The dog's intelligent amber eyes seemed to assess her, his powerful body completely still except for the slight tilt of his head. "That's Duke," the guard called out. "Don't worry, he won't bite. Just got him last week, but he's well trained." Martha nodded, continuing toward the 3-story colonial mansion with its imposing white columns and perfectly symmetrical windows. Before she could reach the grand entrance, the massive front door swung open. "You're 3 minutes late," barked a tall man in his 60s, his silver hair immaculately styled, his navy suit tailored to perfection. Dr. Richard Blackwell's cold blue eyes narrowed as he assessed Martha from head to toe. "I expect punctuality from all my staff." "I'm sorry, sir," Martha replied, her southern accent thickening with nervousness. "The bus ran a little behind schedule, and spare me the excuses," he interrupted, waving a dismissive hand. "And for God's sake, speak properly. That accent makes you sound uneducated." Martha's cheeks burned with humiliation as she followed him into a soaring foyer with marble floors and a crystal chandelier that probably cost more than she'd earn in a decade. "Mrs. Reynolds will show you your duties," he said, gesturing to an older woman in a crisp uniform who appeared from a side hallway. "Your quarters are above the garage. I expect everything to be immaculate. I host important business associates regularly, and I won't tolerate incompetence." "Yes, sir, I understand," Martha replied, fighting to neutralize her accent. Dr. Blackwell scoffed. "Do you? Because you look like you can barely manage your own appearance." He gestured to a small stain on her sleeve that Martha had frantically tried to remove that morning after spilling coffee on the bus. Before Martha could respond, a low growl resonated through the foyer. Duke had somehow entered the house and now stood at the entrance to the grand room, his eyes fixed on Dr. Blackwell. "Duke, outside," Dr. Blackwell commanded sharply. To Martha's surprise, the dog ignored him completely, padding across the marble floor until he stood directly beside her. Gently, the German shepherd pressed against her leg, his warm body a strange comfort against the chill of her new employer's cruelty. "That's unusual," Mrs. Reynolds whispered, her eyes wide. "He hasn't approached anyone like that since he arrived." "Get that animal out of here," Dr. Blackwell snapped, his face reddening. "And you," he pointed at Martha, "remember your place. You're here to work, not make friends with my dog." As Mrs. Reynolds led Duke away, the dog glanced back at Martha, and she could have sworn there was understanding in those intelligent eyes. For a brief moment, Martha felt less alone in this palatial prison of wealth and privilege where she would now spend her days. "Come along," Mrs. Reynolds said kindly when she returned. "I'll show you around. Don't mind him. He treats everyone that way." Martha nodded, straightening her shoulders. This job meant survival, and she would endure whatever came with it. What she couldn't possibly know was that the silent witness to her humiliation, a 3-year-old German shepherd with an extraordinary past, would become the catalyst for a transformation that would change not just her life, but the lives of everyone at Oak Ridge Manor. Over the next 3 weeks, Martha settled into the grinding routine at Oak Ridge Manor. Each morning began at 5:30 a.m., preparing the house before Dr. Blackwell emerged for his 7 a.m. breakfast, which had to be served with military precision. The Wall Street Journal folded precisely beside his plate, coffee at exactly 165 degrees, and his grapefruit sectioned with surgical accuracy. The sections are uneven, Dr. Blackwell snapped one morning, pushing away the carefully prepared fruit. Do they not teach basic geometry where you're from? Or is symmetry too advanced a concept for someone with your background? Martha kept her eyes downcast. I apologize, Dr. Blackwell. I'll prepare another. Don't bother. You've already wasted enough of my time. He checked his Patek Philippe watch, worth more than Martha's annual salary, and scowled. Just get out of my sight. What neither of them acknowledged was Duke's steady presence beside Martha. The German Shepherd had developed an uncanny habit of appearing whenever Dr. Blackwell raised his voice, positioning himself between them with quiet vigilance. Today was no exception. Duke's muscular body tensed as the doctor's voice rose, a low rumble building in his throat. That dog follows you everywhere, Mrs. Reynolds observed later as they polished the silver collection in the butler's pantry. The older woman's hands moved with practiced efficiency over the elaborate pieces. In 30 years working for wealthy families, I've never seen anything like it, especially with a recently adopted animal. He's a sweetheart, Martha replied, glancing at Duke, who lay watching them from the doorway. Makes this place a little more bearable. Mrs. Reynolds lowered her voice. Be careful what you say. These walls have ears, and Dr. Blackwell doesn't tolerate criticism. That evening, as Martha was changing linens in the East Wing, she heard the unmistakable sound of a car crunching up the driveway. Unusual for a Tuesday when Dr. Blackwell typically worked late. Peering through the floor-to-ceiling windows, she saw a sleek black Tesla Model S pull up. A young man in his early 30s stepped out, his casual attire, jeans, and a simple button-down. A stark contrast to Dr. Blackwell's perpetual formality. Oh my, Mrs. Reynolds exclaimed, appearing beside Martha. That's Alexander Blackwell. The prodigal son returns. I didn't know Dr. Blackwell had a son, Martha replied, watching as the young man retrieved a weathered backpack and a guitar case from the car. They're like oil and water. Alexander left 3 years ago after a massive fight. He's been traveling, doing humanitarian work in developing countries. Dr. Blackwell considers it a waste of the expensive education he provided. Mrs. Reynolds sighed. The boy has his mother's heart. God rest her soul. The reunion between father and son was visible through the window of Dr. Blackwell's study. Even without hearing the words, the body language told the story. Dr. Blackwell's rigid posture, Alexander's animated gestures, the unmistakable tension crackling between them. Later that night, as Martha was finishing her final tasks, she encountered Alexander in the kitchen, rummaging through the refrigerator. Sorry to startle you, he said, his warm smile immediately setting him apart from his father. His eyes were the same striking blue as Dr. Blackwell's, but where the father's gaze cut like ice, the son's held genuine warmth. I'm Alex. You must be new here. Martha Wilson, sir. I started 3 weeks ago. She automatically stiffened, expecting the same condescension she received from his father. Please, just Alex. Sir makes me feel like my father. He grimaced, pulling out leftovers. Speaking of whom, I gather nothing's changed around here. Before Martha could respond diplomatically, Duke padded into the kitchen. The dog's reaction to Alex was instantaneous, tail wagging, ears perked forward in friendly recognition. Hey, buddy. Alex knelt, allowing the dog to sniff his hand before scratching behind his ears. Dad finally got a dog? That's unexpected. He's been here just a week longer than I have, Martha explained. They don't seem particularly close. Alex laughed. That doesn't surprise me. My father views pets like he views people, as assets or accessories. He studied Duke thoughtfully. But you two seem to have a connection. Martha's eyes widened. How did you know that? The way he looks at you. Dogs are excellent judges of character. Alex stood, leaning against the counter. So, how bad is it working for him? Martha hesitated, years of professional discretion warring with the unexpected kindness of Alex's inquiry. It's all right, she said finally. The job pays well. Alex's expression softened. That non-answer tells me everything. He sighed, running a hand through his tousled brown hair. "I'm sorry. My father can be difficult. Mr. Alex, I can't afford to complain about my employer," Martha said quietly. "Not everyone has options." Something in Alex's expression changed, a flash of understanding followed by determination. "No, they don't. But that doesn't make it right." He glanced at Duke, who had settled protectively at Martha's feet. "Interesting that Duke's so attached to you already. There's a story there." Later that night, as Martha retreated to her small apartment above the garage, she heard raised voices from the main house. Through her window, she could see Dr. Blackwell and Alex in the study, engaged in heated conversation. Though she couldn't make out the words, their gestures told her enough. They were arguing about something significant. What Martha didn't know then was that Duke had followed Alexander to his room after dinner, where the young man had discovered something remarkable about the dog's background. Information that would soon explain the extraordinary bond forming between a therapy dog with a unique gift and a housekeeper enduring daily humiliation in America's gilded corridors of privilege. The following morning, Martha was scrubbing the kitchen floor when Alex appeared, clutching a manila folder and wearing an expression of barely contained excitement. Duke trotted faithfully at his side, tail wagging when he spotted Martha. "Good morning," she said, quickly standing and wiping her hands on her apron. "Can I get you something for breakfast, Mr. Alex?" "Just Alex, please." He glanced around the immaculate kitchen. "And no thanks. I actually wanted to talk to you about Duke." He patted the German shepherd's head, his expression thoughtful. "I did some digging last night. Made a few calls to the rescue organization where my father got him." Martha raised an eyebrow. "Is something wrong with him?" "Quite the opposite." Alex placed the folder on the counter and opened it. "Duke isn't just any dog. Before my father adopted him as what I can only assume is his latest status symbol, Duke was a certified therapy dog specially trained to detect emotional distress." Martha knelt to stroke Duke's soft fur. "A therapy dog? That explains a lot." Alex nodded eagerly. He was part of an experimental program at Johns Hopkins. They trained him to recognize specific physiological signs of anxiety and emotional distress. He can literally smell cortisol levels rising in someone's system and is trained to provide comfort and protection. "That's remarkable," Martha whispered, meeting Duke's intelligent gaze. "But why would your father adopt a therapy dog? He doesn't exactly strike me as the nurturing type." Alex's expression darkened. "According to the adoption agency, Dad specifically requested the best trained German shepherd available. When they told him about Duke's special abilities, he didn't seem interested in those details. Just wanted to know if the dog would obey commands and look impressive when guests came over." Martha shook her head, disgusted but not surprised. "So he has no idea what Duke was trained for?" "None whatsoever. And he clearly hasn't noticed how Duke behaves around you." Alex leaned against the counter. "These specialized therapy dogs form protective bonds with people exhibiting high stress levels. They're particularly responsive to patterns of abuse or hostility." He paused, looking directly at Martha. "Duke is protecting you from my father, isn't he?" Martha's eyes welled with tears. She quickly blinked away. No one had noticed or cared about Dr. Blackwell's treatment of her until now. "He always seems to appear when your father is having one of his moments. I noticed it within 12 hours of being back," Alex said, his voice tight with anger. "How he speaks to you, to all the staff. It's gotten worse since I left." Their conversation was interrupted by the harsh sound of Dr. Blackwell's voice echoing from the hallway. "Martha, where's my breakfast? I have a board meeting in an hour." Duke immediately stiffened, his posture alert as Dr. Blackwell stormed into the kitchen. The dog moved to stand beside Martha, his body subtly positioned between her and the approaching figure. "I apologize, sir," Martha said, quickly moving toward the refrigerator. "I was just finishing the floors before." "I don't pay you to make excuses," Dr. Blackwell snapped. "I expect competence, not explanations." "Dad," Alex interjected, his voice carrying a warning tone. "It's barely 6:30. Your meeting isn't until 9 o'clock. Dr. Blackwell's cold gaze shifted to his son. "Stay out of this, Alexander. You may have chosen to abandon responsibility and professionalism, but in this house, we maintain standards." Martha worked silently, preparing his usual breakfast while trying to become invisible, a skill she perfected over the years. Duke remained beside her, his eyes never leaving Dr. Blackwell. "That animal is becoming a nuisance," Dr. Blackwell muttered, noticing Duke's vigilant stance. He follows the help around like he belongs in the servants' quarters instead of recognizing who actually pays for his premium dog food. Alex's jaw tightened. Maybe he just knows who deserves his loyalty. The tension in the room was palpable as father and son engaged in a silent battle of wills. Martha placed Dr. Blackwell's perfectly prepared breakfast on the counter, hoping to defuse the situation. As she turned back to the stove, her elbow knocked against a crystal vase filled with fresh-cut lilies. Mrs. Reynolds' pride and joy, a family heirloom that had belonged to the late Mrs. Blackwell. Martha watched in horror as the vase teetered, then crashed to the floor, shattering into dozens of glittering pieces. "You clumsy, worthless," Dr. Blackwell began, his face contorting with rage. "It was an accident," Alex cut in sharply. "An expensive accident," Dr. Blackwell snarled, advancing toward Martha. "That vase was a Wellington crystal piece from my wife's collection. It's irreplaceable." Martha dropped to her knees, frantically gathering the larger shards. "I'm so sorry, sir. I'll replace it, I promise. I'll pay for it out of my salary." "As if you could afford it on what I pay you," Dr. Blackwell scoffed. "This is coming out of your wages for the next 6 months. Duke moved forward, planting himself firmly between Martha and Dr. Blackwell, his teeth bared in a silent warning. "Control your dog, Alexander," Dr. Blackwell demanded, taking a step back despite himself. Martha's hands trembled as she collected the broken crystal, a shard slicing into her finger. She bit back a cry of pain, a small drop of blood staining the immaculate tile floor. Duke's reaction was immediate. He gently nudged Martha's hand with his nose, then to everyone's astonishment, trotted to the kitchen trash can. Using his paw with surprising dexterity, he managed to hook the edge of the lid, pushing it open. "What is he doing?" Dr. Blackwell demanded. Duke returned seconds later, delicately carrying something in his mouth. He dropped it at Alex's feet, a jagged piece of crystal identical to the shattered vase, but clearly broken previously. Alex picked it up, examining it closely. "This break isn't fresh," he said slowly, turning to his father. "There's dust in the cracks. This piece was broken before today." "That's ridiculous," Dr. Blackwell blustered, but his momentary hesitation spoke volumes. Duke returned to the trash, retrieving another piece, then another, clear evidence that the vase had been broken days earlier. Martha stared in disbelief as Alex pieced together the truth. "You broke it, didn't you, Dad? And you were going to let Martha take the blame." The silence that followed was damning. Dr. Blackwell's expression cycled through shock, anger, and finally a fleeting glimpse of shame before hardening once more. "This is absurd. I'm late for my meeting." He grabbed his briefcase, avoiding everyone's eyes. "Clean this mess up," he ordered Martha before storming out. When he was gone, Alex helped Martha to her feet, wrapping her cut finger with a clean kitchen towel. "I'm so sorry," he said quietly. "This isn't right." Martha looked down at Duke, who had resumed his post beside her, his mission accomplished. "How did he know?" she whispered. "Because he's extraordinary," Alex replied, a strange determination settling over his features as he pulled out his phone and began filming Duke's protective stance beside Martha. "And I think it's time the world knew just how extraordinary he is." "Hold still," Alex murmured, his iPhone capturing Duke's protective posture as the German Shepherd pressed against Martha's leg. "This is incredible. He's literally positioning himself as a barrier." Martha shifted uncomfortably. Alex, what are you doing with that video?" Alex lowered his phone, his expression thoughtful. "I have an idea. Something that might help more people than just you." He knelt beside Duke, scratching behind the dog's ears. "What happened this morning with the vase? That was extraordinary. Duke deliberately gathered evidence to protect you." "I can't afford to make waves," Martha whispered, glancing nervously toward the doorway. "This job is all I have after the hotel chain downsized. My sister depends on me to help with her medical bills." Alex's eyes softened. "I understand. That's why I'm not going to identify you or my father. But Duke's abilities shouldn't be hidden away in this mansion, used as a status symbol by someone who doesn't appreciate him." That evening, after completing her duties, Martha retreated to her quarters above the garage. The small apartment was sparsely furnished but meticulously clean. A single bed with a handmade quilt sent by her mother from Tennessee, a worn armchair rescued from a thrift store, and a small desk where she carefully tracked her expenses. Her most prized possession was a framed photograph of her sister Emma and her niece Lily, both smiling from the porch of their modest home in Nashville. A soft knock at her door startled her. Opening it, she found Alex standing there with Duke at his side. "May we come in?" he asked. "I want to show you something." Martha hesitated, painfully aware of the contrast between her humble quarters and the opulence of the main house. "It's not much, but please, come in." Alex sat at her small table, opening his laptop. "I created an anonymous account and posted the video of Duke this morning. I've edited it so neither you nor this house is identifiable." He turned the screen toward her. "Look at this." The video showed Duke retrieving the broken pieces from the trash, then standing protectively beside an unidentifiable woman. The caption read, "Therapy dog exposes gaslighting and protects victim." This is Duke, a specially trained therapy dog who can detect emotional distress and bullying. It's been up for 6 hours and already has 20,000 views. Alex said, scrolling through the comments. People are amazed by him. Martha's heart raced. What if your father sees it? He won't recognize it. I was careful to film only Duke in parts of the kitchen that could be anywhere. Plus, my father doesn't exactly spend his free time scrolling through social media. Alex closed the laptop. This could be the beginning of something important, Martha. Duke's abilities could raise awareness about workplace bullying and emotional abuse. Duke patted over to Martha, resting his head on her knee. She stroked his soft fur, marveling at the intelligence in his amber eyes. "He really is special, isn't he?" "More than my father deserves," Alex replied, his voice hardening. "You know, I left 3 years ago because I couldn't stand what he was becoming. After my mother died, something in him just broke. Or maybe it revealed what was always there." He gazed out the small window overlooking the manicured gardens. "I spent the last 3 years working with humanitarian organizations in Central America, building medical clinics in underserved communities. Meanwhile, my father's been expanding his hospital empire by cutting staff benefits and overcharging patients." Martha listened quietly, sensing Alex needed to unburden himself. "Your mother, what was she like?" Alex's expression softened. "The complete opposite of my father. Compassionate, humble despite her wealth. She volunteered at a homeless shelter twice a week. Dad used to be different when she was alive. Still demanding, but there was a gentleness underneath. Now," he shook his head, "now there's just cold ambition." Over the next few days, Alex posted more videos of Duke, the dog alerting before Dr. Blackwell entered a room, placing himself protectively near staff members when tensions rose, gently leading Martha away from confrontations. Each video was carefully edited to conceal identities while highlighting Duke's extraordinary empathy. The online response was overwhelming. #EmpathyDog began trending, with thousands sharing their own experiences of workplace toxicity. Behavioral psychologists commented on Duke's remarkable abilities, and animal rights advocates celebrated the evidence of animal emotional intelligence. On Friday morning, as Martha prepared the dining room for an important business dinner Dr. Blackwell was hosting that evening, Mrs. Reynolds approached her with wide eyes. "Have you seen this?" she whispered, showing Martha her phone. "There's a dog on the internet that looks exactly like Duke. The videos have millions of views." Martha feigned surprise, her hands trembling slightly as she arranged the Limoges china. "That's certainly something. The strange thing is," Mrs. Reynolds continued, glancing around to ensure they were alone, "that dog behaves exactly like our Duke. The way he positions himself between people, how he seems to sense tension." She peered at Martha suspiciously. "You wouldn't happen to know anything about this, would you?" Before Martha could respond, Alex entered the dining room, Duke faithfully at his side. "Good morning, ladies. Everything looks perfect for tonight's dinner." Mrs. Reynolds tucked her phone away, nodding respectfully. "Yes, Mr. Alexander. Everything will be ready for your father's guests from Meridian Healthcare." Alex's expression darkened momentarily. "Ah yes, the potential acquisition. Another hospital chain to add to the Blackwell empire." He turned to Martha. "My father mentioned you'll be serving tonight. The regular server called in sick." "Yes," Martha replied. "It's not my usual role, but Dr. Blackwell insisted." "Of course he did," Alex muttered. "God forbid he hire additional staff at a fair wage." He checked his watch. "I need to head into the city for a meeting. Will you look after Duke for me?" Martha nodded, surprised. "Are you sure? Your father might not approve." "My father's approval stopped being a priority long ago. Alex replied with a wry smile. He knelt beside Duke, speaking softly to the dog. Stay with Martha today, buddy. Keep her safe. Throughout the day, Martha felt the comforting presence of Duke beside her as she completed her preparations for the evening's dinner. Dr. Blackwell was hosting executives from Meridian Healthcare, a struggling hospital chain he planned to acquire, his fifth acquisition in 3 years. What none of them realized was that tonight's dinner would become the backdrop for Duke's most public display of protection yet, one that would shake the foundations of Dr. Blackwell's carefully constructed facade and accelerate the chain of events already set in motion by a series of viral videos that had captured the nation's imagination with a simple yet powerful message. Sometimes the most profound empathy comes from those who can't speak a word. By 6 o'clock that evening, Oak Ridge Manor had transformed into the perfect setting for Dr. Blackwell's high-stakes business dinner. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over the formal dining room, where a magnificent mahogany table stretched beneath a ceiling fresco depicting Greek deities. Fresh-cut hydrangeas and roses from the estate's gardens filled sterling silver vases, their subtle fragrance mingling with the aroma of Martha's meticulously prepared 5-course meal. Martha had changed into the formal serving uniform Dr. Blackwell required for such occasions, a pressed black dress with a white collar that reminded her of something from a period drama about English aristocracy. The outfit made her feel like a prop in Dr. Blackwell's performance of wealth and power, but tonight she had more pressing concerns than her wounded dignity. Remember, Mrs. Reynolds instructed as they made final preparations in the kitchen, these Meridian Healthcare executives are his most important acquisition targets yet. He's been pursuing them for months. Everything must be flawless. I understand, Martha replied, adjusting her collar nervously. Where should Duke stay during dinner? Dr. Blackwell won't want him in the dining room. Mrs. Reynolds glanced at the German shepherd, who sat attentively beside Martha. He's been so well-behaved today. Perhaps in the mudroom? Though I doubt he'll stay put if he's determined to follow you. At precisely 7 p.m., the doorbell chimed. Martha positioned Duke in the mudroom with his favorite blanket, gently closing the door before hurrying to her station. From the kitchen doorway, she watched Dr. Blackwell welcome his guests. 3 executives in expensive suits and 1 woman in a tailored navy dress, her silver hair styled in an elegant bob. Catherine, so delighted you could join us, Dr. Blackwell said, taking the woman's hand. Allow me to introduce James Chun, my CFO, and my son, Alexander, who's visiting from his charitable adventures. Alex shook hands with each guest, his simple yet well-cut blazer a deliberate contrast to his father's ostentatious display of wealth. It's a pleasure to meet you all, especially you, Dr. Wells. Your research on accessible healthcare models is inspiring. Catherine Wells smiled warmly. Thank you, Alexander. It's refreshing to meet a young man interested in healthcare beyond its profit margins. Dr. Blackwell's smile tightened almost imperceptibly as he guided everyone toward the dining room. Let's continue this delightful conversation over dinner, shall we? Martha began serving the first course, a delicate butternut squash soup garnished with creme fraiche and toasted pumpkin seeds. She moved silently around the table, careful to remain invisible as Dr. Blackwell dominated the conversation. Meridian's potential is being squandered under its current management structure, he was saying, gesturing with his soup spoon. Once integrated into Blackwell Medical Group, we can streamline operations, eliminate redundancies, and increase profitability by at least 30% within the first year. By eliminate redundancies, I assume you mean layoffs? Catherine asked pointedly, her spoon pausing midway to her mouth. Necessary adjustments, Dr. Blackwell countered smoothly. The healthcare industry can't sustain inefficiencies in today's economic climate. As Martha cleared the soup course and prepared to serve the salad, a soft whining sound came from the kitchen. All heads turned as Duke trotted confidently into the dining room, having somehow escaped the mudroom. Instead of causing a commotion, he simply walked to Martha's side and sat, his posture alert but calm. I apologize for the interruption, Dr. Blackwell said tightly. Martha, please remove the animal immediately. Martha flushed with embarrassment. Yes, sir. Come, Duke. To everyone's surprise, Duke refused to budge. He remained planted beside Martha, his intelligent eyes fixed on Dr. Blackwell. Remarkable animal, James Chin observed. German shepherd, correct? They're incredibly loyal. Yes, and unfortunately stubborn, Dr. Blackwell replied with a forced laugh. Martha, I won't ask again. Martha knelt beside Duke, whispering urgently, Please come, boy. You'll get me in trouble. The dog's response was to press closer to her, his body language unmistakably protective. Actually, Alex interjected smoothly, Duke is a specially trained therapy dog. He was part of an experimental program at Johns Hopkins before my father adopted him. He's trained to detect emotional distress and provide comfort. Perhaps he senses something we don't. Catherine Wells looked intrigued. How fascinating. I've read about these programs. The dogs can actually detect changes in human cortisol levels, can't they? Precisely, Alex replied, throwing a challenging glance at his father. They form strong bonds with individuals experiencing sustained emotional stress. An uncomfortable silence fell over the table as the implications of Alex's statement sank in. Martha stood frozen, the salad plates balanced precariously in her hands, acutely aware of becoming the center of unwanted attention. Duke seems quite attached to your staff member, Catherine observed, studying the dog's protective stance beside Martha. Has he been with your family long? Just over a month, Dr. Blackwell replied tersely. Martha, the salads, please. Martha hurriedly served the plates, desperately wishing she could disappear. Duke followed her around the table, maintaining a consistent distance between her and Dr. Blackwell. I saw a viral video recently, said Michael Pendergast, Meridian's legal counsel, as he accepted his plate, about a therapy dog who protects people from workplace bullying. The resemblance to your Duke is remarkable. Dr. Blackwell's hand tightened around his wine glass. I don't follow social media trends, Mr. Pendergast. It's quite the phenomenon, Catherine added. Over 10 million views now. The dog in the video positions himself exactly as Duke is doing now, creating a physical barrier between individuals. Behavioral psychologists are calling it a breakthrough in understanding canine emotional intelligence. Martha nearly dropped the serving tray when Catherine pulled out her phone. Here it is. The dog even looks identical. As the video played, Martha caught Alex's eye across the table. His expression remained neutral, but there was a glint of satisfaction in his gaze. Fascinating coincidence, Dr. Blackwell said dismissively. Now, about the acquisition timeline. Richard, Catherine interrupted, her tone sharpening. Before we discuss business matters further, I'd like to better understand your corporate culture. Meridian prides itself on creating supportive environments for our staff. Our turnover rate is among the lowest in the industry. Blackwell Medical Group demands excellence, Dr. Blackwell replied stiffly. Our standards are exacting, but fair. As he spoke, his voice rose slightly. Duke immediately responded, moving closer to Martha and emitting a low, warning whine. The correlation between Dr. Blackwell's tone and Duke's reaction was unmistakable. Catherine set down her fork, her expression hardening. I see. And do your exacting standards include speaking to your staff in a manner that triggers a protective response from a therapy dog trained to detect emotional distress? The dining room fell silent. Martha stood paralyzed, the half-empty salad bowl clutched against her chest, as Dr. Blackwell's face flushed with barely contained rage. I think, Catherine continued, folding her napkin deliberately, that before Meridian considers any acquisition offer, we'll need a thorough review of your company culture and employee satisfaction metrics. My father built Meridian on the principle that how we treat the most vulnerable members of our team defines us as leaders. Dr. Blackwell forced a tight smile. Of course, Catherine. I welcome such a review. Perhaps we've strayed from discussing the substantial financial benefits this merger would provide your shareholders. On the contrary, Catherine replied coolly, I believe we've uncovered exactly what we needed to know about this potential partnership. She turned to Martha, her expression softening. The salmon is excellent, dear. My compliments to the chef. For the remainder of the excruciating dinner, Duke maintained his vigilant position beside Martha, occasionally glancing up at her face as if checking her emotional state. Dr. Blackwell grew increasingly agitated, while Alex engaged the Meridian executives in conversation about healthcare accessibility initiatives that clearly resonated with Catherine Wells's vision. By the time Martha served coffee in the library following dinner, it was evident that Dr. Blackwell's carefully orchestrated evening had unraveled spectacularly. all because of a German shepherd's unfailing instinct to protect someone he sensed needed protection. What no one at the table realized was that the evening's events would soon spiral far beyond a failed business dinner. The wheels of change had been set in motion, accelerated by a viral internet sensation and a son's determination to challenge his father's toxic legacy. The morning after the disastrous dinner party, Martha awoke to the sound of raised voices emanating from the main house. Peering through her window, she could see Dr. Blackwell gesturing furiously at Alex in the garden below. Even from a distance, his rage was palpable. Face flushed crimson, veins protruding from his neck as he jabbed a finger repeatedly at his son's chest. Alex, by contrast, stood calmly, hands in his pockets, his posture relaxed yet resolute. When Dr. Blackwell finally stormed back into the house, slamming the French doors with such force that the glass rattled in its frame, Alex remained in the garden, gazing thoughtfully at the rose bushes his mother had planted years ago. Martha dressed quickly and made her way to the kitchen, where Mrs. Reynolds was already preparing breakfast, her movements more hurried than usual. "What happened?" Martha asked, tying her apron. Mrs. Reynolds glanced nervously toward the dining room. "Meridian Healthcare withdrew from acquisition talks this morning. Dr. Blackwell received the email at 6 a.m. She lowered her voice. Catherine Wells cited fundamental differences in management philosophy and corporate culture as the reason. "Because of last night? Because of Duke?" "Partly," Mrs. Reynolds replied. "But there's more. The stock for Blackwell Medical Group dropped 8% in pre-market trading. Apparently, those videos of Duke have been connected to rumors about toxic leadership at BMG. No one has named Dr. Blackwell specifically, but investors are getting nervous." Martha's stomach knotted with anxiety. He must be furious. Livid would be an understatement. I haven't seen him this angry since Mrs. Blackwell passed. Mrs. Reynolds handed Martha a tray of freshly squeezed orange juice and toast. "He's demanded breakfast in his study. I'd avoid eye contact if I were you." With trepidation, Martha carried the breakfast tray across the foyer, passing the mahogany-paneled study where Dr. Blackwell was visible through the partially open door. He sat behind his massive desk, phone pressed to his ear, voice tight with controlled fury. "I don't care what it takes, Jenkins. Fix this. Buy back shares if necessary. And find out who's behind these videos. I want them shut down immediately." He glanced up, noticing Martha hovering with his breakfast. "Enter," he snapped. Martha placed the tray on his desk with trembling hands, careful not to spill a drop of juice on the antique surface. "Where's the dog?" Dr. Blackwell demanded abruptly. "With Mr. Alex, I believe, sir." Dr. Blackwell's eyes narrowed. "That animal has become a liability. I want him gone by the end of the week." Martha's head snapped up in alarm. "Gone, sir? Are you deaf as well as incompetent?" "Yes, gone. I'll have him returned to the shelter." Dr. Blackwell turned back to his computer, dismissing her. Martha retreated from the study, her heart racing. She found Alex in the kitchen, Duke at his feet, both enjoying a much more relaxed breakfast than the master of the house. "Your father wants to send Duke back to the shelter," she blurted out, forgetting all protocols of staff-employer communication in her distress. Alex calmly buttered his toast. "He can try. Duke is technically registered to me, not him. Dad just paid for him." He smiled reassuringly at Martha. "Don't worry. I won't let anything happen to Duke. Or to you." Martha sank into a chair, overwhelmed. "This is all spinning out of control. Those videos, last night's dinner. I can't afford to lose this job, Alex." "You won't," Alex promised. "In fact, I have something to show you." He opened his laptop, turning it toward her. The #EmpathyDog hashtag has gone mega viral. Duke now has dedicated accounts across all social media platforms with millions of followers. "I've been contacted by morning shows, animal behavior specialists, and workplace harassment prevention organizations." The screen displayed Duke's latest video, footage from the previous night's dinner, obviously filmed discreetly by Alex under the table. It showed Duke maintaining his protective position beside Martha, whining softly whenever Dr. Blackwell's voice rose. The unidentified faces were blurred, and there was nothing to indicate the setting was Oak Ridge Manor, but the message was clear. "You filmed during dinner?" Martha gasped. "Alex, if your father finds out, he won't," Alex assured her. "But even if he did, it's too late. Duke has become a symbol for something much bigger than one household's dynamics. Look at the comments. Martha scrolled through thousands of responses. This dog is doing more to combat workplace bullying than most HR departments. I wish I had an #empathy dog at my toxic job. This is powerful. As a psychologist specializing in workplace trauma, I can confirm this dog's behavior is extraordinary. He's creating a physical boundary between the aggressor and the target. Is no one going to talk about how the dog is literally standing up to power dynamics that humans are too afraid to challenge? I'm showing this to my entire management team tomorrow. This is what real protection looks like. Martha looked up, stunned by the scope of the response. What happens now? Alex closed his laptop, his expression resolute. Now we take Duke's message beyond social media. I've been invited to bring him to a conference on workplace wellness next week. No one will know he's from this household. I'll simply present as a private citizen who adopted a remarkable therapy dog. The goal is to use Duke as a symbol for recognizing and addressing toxic work environments. Before Martha could respond, her phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced at it, her expression shifting from concern to surprise. It's my sister, Emma, she explained. She's been offered a position at Blackwell Memorial Hospital in Nashville, a human resources consultant position. She looked up at Alex, confused. She never mentioned applying there. Alex's smile was enigmatic. The universe works in mysterious ways. Throughout the following days, the atmosphere at Oak Ridge Manor grew increasingly tense. Dr. Blackwell became more isolated, spending long hours in his study or at the office. Market analysts had begun questioning his leadership style, and rumors circulated about a potential board inquiry into the corporate culture at Blackwell Medical Group. Meanwhile, the #empathy dog phenomenon continued to grow. Duke's videos had been featured on national morning shows, and behavioral psychologists published articles analyzing his protective instincts. While Dr. Blackwell remained oblivious to Alex's role in the viral sensation, his frustration with Duke's behavior intensified. The dog clearly has behavioral issues, he complained during a rare family dinner. He still refuses to obey my commands, yet follows the staff around like a shadow. I'm beginning to think he was inadequately trained. Or perhaps, Alex suggested mildly, he's responding to environmental cues that you're choosing to ignore. Dr. Blackwell's fork clattered against his plate. What exactly are you implying, Alexander? That Duke is doing exactly what he was trained to do, responding to emotional distress and offering protection. The question isn't what's wrong with Duke, but rather what's triggering his protective behaviors in the first place. The conversation might have escalated further if not for the arrival of an urgent email on Dr. Blackwell's phone. His board of directors had called an emergency meeting to address concerns regarding leadership and corporate culture. His face paled as he read the message. This is absurd, he muttered. 20 years building this company, and suddenly they're questioning my leadership over unsubstantiated rumors and social media nonsense. Maybe it's not so unsubstantiated, Alex replied quietly. Maybe Duke is showing you something you've been unwilling to see. Later that evening, as Martha prepared to end her workday, she found Alex waiting for her outside the staff entrance, Duke faithfully at his side. My sister starts her new job next week, Martha said. She still can't believe she was headhunted by Blackwell Memorial. She's never worked in healthcare before. Her background is in corporate ethics and employee relations. Alex nodded, a small smile playing at his lips. Sometimes the right person appears exactly when they're needed most. Emma's expertise in creating healthy workplace environments is precisely what my father's company needs right now. Martha studied him suspiciously. You had something to do with this, didn't you? Let's just say I've made some suggestions to the board about addressing our company's cultural issues. Alex glanced toward the main house, where lights still burned in Dr. Blackwell's study. Change is coming, Martha. For all of us. The question is whether my father will adapt or fight it every step of the way. What neither of them could have anticipated was how a sudden illness would accelerate that change, or how Duke's most remarkable act of empathy was yet to come, aimed not at protecting Martha from Dr. Blackwell, but at something far more unexpected, protecting Richard Blackwell from himself. Emma Wilson stepped into the gleaming lobby of Blackwell Memorial Hospital with the cautious determination of someone entering unfamiliar territory. At 42, she shared her sister's warm brown eyes and practical approach to life. But where Martha was soft-spoken, Emma projected a quiet confidence honed through years of advocating for others. Her simple navy pantsuit and single string of pearls, a gift from Martha on her 40th birthday, gave her a professional appearance without ostentation. "Ms. Wilson, welcome to Blackwell Memorial," greeted Diane Perkins, the hospital's administrative director. "We're thrilled to have you joining our team. Your experience in corporate ethics is exactly what we've been looking for." Emma smiled, shaking the woman's hand firmly. "Thank you. I must admit, I was surprised to receive the offer. My background isn't in healthcare. Perhaps, but your expertise in creating healthy workplace environments is precisely what we need." Diane led her through security, where Emma received her ID badge. "The board has implemented a new initiative focused on staff well-being and ethical workplace practices. You'll be reporting directly to them, with the authority to assess and implement changes across all Blackwell facilities." As they toured the hospital, Emma noted the staff interactions, the hushed conversations that ceased when supervisors approached, the tense postures of nurses at the station, the weary resignation in the custodial staff's eyes. These subtle signs of workplace strain were painfully familiar to her. "Your office," Diane announced, opening a door to a spacious corner room with windows overlooking the city. The previous occupant was our cost-cutting specialist. The board felt this space would better serve our new priorities. Emma set down her briefcase, taking in the symbolic significance of her position. "I'd like to begin with anonymous staff surveys. Can you arrange meetings with department heads this afternoon?" "Of course, though I should warn you, change doesn't come easily here. Dr. Blackwell's management style has deeply permeated our culture." "I'm aware," Emma replied. "My sister works for him." Diane's eyes widened. "Martha is your sister? I had no idea. Few people do, and I prefer to keep it that way for now. I want my assessment to remain impartial." Over the following days, Emma immersed herself in understanding Blackwell Memorial's dynamics, interviewing staff, reviewing policies, and analyzing turnover rates. The picture that emerged was troubling but consistent with what Martha had described: a culture of fear, impossible standards, and leadership through intimidation. On Friday evening, Emma received an unexpected call from Alex Blackwell. "How's your first week been?" he asked after introducing himself. "Illuminating," Emma replied carefully, unsure how much to reveal to the CEO's son, despite his role in her hiring. "There's significant work to be done here." "I expected as much," Alex said. "Listen, I'm calling because I think it's time you met my father in person. Not as Martha's sister or even as the new HR consultant, but in another context entirely. I'm taking Duke to visit several institutions next week as part of the #EmpathyDog project. Blackwell Memorial should be on that list, don't you think?" Emma quickly grasped his strategy. "Indeed it should. I'll arrange everything." "Perfect. One more thing. Martha's been unusually tired lately. Has she mentioned feeling unwell to you?" "She's downplayed it, but yes. She mentioned fever and fatigue. I've been trying to convince her to see a doctor." "I'll make sure she does," Alex promised. "In the meantime, let's proceed with our plan." What neither Emma nor Alex realized was that Martha's condition would deteriorate rapidly over the weekend. By Sunday evening, she was running a high fever, her lungs congested with what Dr. Blackwell dismissively diagnosed as a common cold, nothing worth making a fuss about. On Monday morning, Martha failed to appear for her duties for the first time since starting at Oak Ridge Manor. Mrs. Reynolds found her in her apartment above the garage, barely conscious and burning with fever. "Pneumonia," pronounced the doctor. Alex insisted on calling, ignoring his father's protests. "She needs immediate hospitalization and aggressive antibiotic treatment." This has clearly been developing for days. As Martha was loaded into the ambulance, Duke became frantic, whining and pacing, attempting to follow the stretcher. "Keep that animal under control," Dr. Blackwell snapped as the paramedics closed the ambulance doors. He turned to Mrs. Reynolds. "Find a temporary replacement. I'm hosting the hospital board on Thursday, and I expect everything to run smoothly." Alex stared at his father in disbelief. "That's your concern right now? Your dinner party? Martha could have died if we hadn't found her in time." "Don't be melodramatic, Alexander. People get sick. I'm simply ensuring the household continues to function. She got sick because she's been working 16-hour days in this mausoleum you call a home, afraid to take time off because you've made it clear her position is tenuous at best." Alex's voice rose, echoing through the marble foyer. "When did you become this person, Dad? When did money and power become more important than basic human dignity?" Dr. Blackwell's face hardened. When I had to accept that sentimental weakness couldn't build a healthcare empire. Your mother's charitable ideals were admirable, but impractical in today's market. Someone had to make the hard decisions. Is that what you tell yourself? That cruelty is just good business. Alex shook his head in disgust. Mom would be heartbroken to see what you've become. The mention of his late wife seemed to strike a nerve. For a brief moment, something like pain flickered across Dr. Blackwell's features before the familiar mask of cold authority reasserted itself. We're done here, he said flatly, turning toward his study. Handle the Martha situation however you see fit. Just ensure someone competent is in place by Thursday. Over the next 2 days, Martha remained hospitalized while Duke became increasingly lethargic. The normally energetic German shepherd refused his food, spent hours lying beside Martha's empty quarters, and responded only minimally to Alex's attempts to engage him. He's grieving, Alex explained to Mrs. Reynolds as they watched Duke stare listlessly out the window. These therapy dogs form incredibly strong bonds. Being separated from Martha is causing him physical distress. Mrs. Reynolds frowned with concern. Perhaps he should visit her? Animals aren't generally allowed in hospitals, but considering his training. That's exactly what I was thinking, Alex replied, already formulating a plan. And I know just how to arrange it. On Wednesday afternoon, a sleek black SUV pulled up to Oak Ridge Manor. Alex emerged from the house with Duke, who perked up slightly at the prospect of a car ride. Where are you taking him? Dr. Blackwell demanded, appearing unexpectedly in the driveway. To see Martha, Alex replied honestly. Duke hasn't eaten in 2 days. The vet says he's showing classic signs of separation anxiety. This visit isn't just for Martha's benefit. It's medically necessary for Duke. Dr. Blackwell frowned. This attachment between my domestic staff and my dog is becoming ridiculous. He's not your dog, Dad. He's a highly trained therapy animal who's formed a bond with someone in emotional distress. This is literally what he was bred and trained to do. Fine, just have him back by tomorrow. The board members are bringing their spouses, and having a pedigreed German shepherd presents the right image. Alex's jaw tightened at his father's persistent superficiality. Actually, I've arranged something more significant. Duke has been invited to Blackwell Memorial as part of a demonstration on emotional support animals in healthcare settings. The board will be there to witness it. You did what? Dr. Blackwell's face flushed. You had no authority. Actually, the invitation came through proper channels, Alex interrupted smoothly. The new workplace wellness consultant thought it would align perfectly with the board's new initiatives. Apparently, she's been following Duke's social media presence with great interest. Dr. Blackwell stared at his son, suspicion dawning. What aren't you telling me, Alexander? Many things, Dad. But most importantly, that it's time for you to see firsthand what Duke has been trying to show you all along. Alex opened the car door, helping Duke into the back seat. You're welcome to join us tomorrow. In fact, I think it's essential that you do. As the SUV pulled away, Dr. Blackwell remained in the driveway, an unsettling sensation creeping through him. The feeling that events were unfolding beyond his control for the first time in decades. What he couldn't possibly anticipate was how the following day's demonstration would bring together all the threads that had been quietly weaving around him. A viral internet sensation, a son's quiet rebellion, a housekeeper's dignity, and the unexpected influence of her sister, now positioned at the heart of his corporate empire with a mandate for transformation. Most significant of all was the role that would be played by a 3-year-old German shepherd, whose unfailing instinct for emotional truth would finally break through barriers that human words had failed to penetrate for years, reaching the heart of a man who had forgotten he had won. Blackwell Memorial Hospital's main auditorium buzzed with anticipation. Board members in expensive suits mingled with clinical staff, administrators, and specially invited guests from local media outlets. At the back of the room, a small video crew adjusted their equipment, representatives from a major morning show interested in featuring the now famous #EmpathyDog in a segment on workplace wellness. Emma Wilson stood near the podium, reviewing her notes with practiced calm despite the butterflies in her stomach. This presentation would either launch meaningful change throughout the Blackwell healthcare system or end her promising new career before it truly began. Her gaze frequently drifted to the auditorium doors, watching for Alex's arrival with Duke. And, hopefully, Dr. Blackwell himself. Quite the turnout, remarked Diane Perkins, joining Emma at the front. The board rarely achieves full attendance, yet every single member is here today. And did you see who just arrived? Catherine Wells from Meridian Healthcare. Emma raised an eyebrow. The acquisition that fell through? That's unexpected. Apparently, she requested an invitation after hearing about today's demonstration. Between us, there are rumors the board is reconsidering her as a potential strategic partner rather than an acquisition target. The auditorium doors opened again, and Emma's heart leaped as Alex entered with Duke on a leash. The German shepherd looked alert but subdued, his normally exuberant energy dampened by separation from Martha. Behind them, to Emma's relief, came Dr. Richard Blackwell, his expression a careful mask of professional interest that didn't quite conceal his underlying irritation. "There you are," Emma greeted them, extending her hand to Dr. Blackwell. "I'm Emma Wilson, the new workplace wellness consultant. Thank you for joining us today, Dr. Blackwell." "MS. Wilson," he replied with a curt nod, his eyes narrowing slightly. "I must say, this event was arranged with unusual haste. In the future, I expect to be consulted before my hospital facilities are commandeered for demonstrations." "Of course," Emma replied smoothly. However, the board was quite enthusiastic about incorporating Duke into our new wellness initiatives, particularly given his remarkable viral presence. Before Dr. Blackwell could respond, the board chairwoman approached, her hand extended warmly toward Alex. "Alexander, wonderful to see you again. And this must be the famous Duke we've heard so much about." Dr. Blackwell's head snapped toward his son. "Again? You've met with the board?" "Several times," the chairwoman replied before Alex could answer. "Alexander has provided valuable insights into potential reforms for our corporate culture. His experiences with international healthcare systems have been illuminating, to say the least." Emma caught the flash of betrayal in Dr. Blackwell's eyes before his practiced corporate smile reasserted itself. "Indeed, my son has always had alternative perspectives on healthcare management." The lights dimmed slightly, signaling the start of the presentation. As attendees took their seats, Emma approached the podium while Alex and Duke positioned themselves stage right. Dr. Blackwell, visibly tense, sat in the front row between the board chairwoman and Catherine Wells. "Good afternoon," Emma began, her voice steady and clear. "Thank you all for joining us for this special demonstration. Over the past week, I've been conducting a comprehensive assessment of workplace culture across Blackwell facilities. Today, rather than presenting statistical data or policy recommendations, I'd like to show you something more powerful: the remarkable abilities of a therapy dog named Duke." The large screen behind her displayed clips from Duke's viral videos, carefully edited to never show Martha or Oak Ridge Manor clearly, but unmistakable to anyone who had witnessed Duke's behavior firsthand. Duke is a 3-year-old German Shepherd trained in an experimental program at Johns Hopkins to detect emotional distress, Emma continued. His ability to recognize and respond to psychological trauma, anxiety, and workplace stress has made him an internet sensation with over 20 million followers. Today, we have the privilege of seeing his abilities demonstrated live. Alex stepped forward with Duke, who surveyed the room with alert interest. Duke forms strong protective bonds with individuals experiencing sustained emotional distress, Alex explained. He positions himself as a physical barrier between the person he's protecting and the perceived source of stress or hostility. Dr. Blackwell shifted uncomfortably in his seat as Alex continued. What makes Duke truly extraordinary is his ability to detect these dynamics without prior training specific to individual people. He simply knows who needs protection. Emma nodded to a nurse standing by a side door. To demonstrate, we've arranged for Duke to reunite with someone he formed a special connection with recently. Someone who has been experiencing exactly the kind of workplace stress Duke is trained to detect. The side door opened, and Martha entered hesitantly. Though still pale from her recent illness, she had traded her housekeeper's uniform for a simple blue dress that Emma had brought her. Dr. Blackwell stiffened visibly at the sight of his housekeeper in this unexpected context. Duke's reaction was immediate and electric. His ears perked forward, his entire body quivering with sudden energy. With a soft whine that carried through the silent auditorium, he pulled forward on his leash, straining toward Martha. Alex released the tension, and Duke bounded across the stage, reaching Martha in seconds. His tail wagged furiously as he circled her, pressing against her legs, looking up at her face with what could only be described as canine joy. Martha knelt, embracing the dog as tears streamed down her face. A collective awe rippled through the audience at the emotional reunion. As you can see, Emma continued, Duke formed a powerful bond with my sister, Martha Wilson, who has been experiencing significant workplace stress. While Duke's viral videos never identified the specific context, they documented his consistent efforts to protect Martha from a hostile work environment. Dr. Blackwell's face drained of color as the implications became clear. He glanced around the auditorium, suddenly aware that every board member, executive, and media representative was watching his reaction. Now for the most remarkable part of our demonstration, Emma said, nodding to Alex. Duke not only recognizes who needs protection, but understands exactly who that protection is needed from. Alex guided Duke and Martha toward the front row. The German Shepherd walked confidently alongside Martha until they approached Dr. Blackwell. Duke immediately shifted position, placing himself between Martha and her employer, his posture alert but not aggressive. A hushed murmur spread through the audience as Duke's behavior made the power dynamics unmistakably clear. This, Emma said quietly into the microphone, is what toxic leadership looks like through the eyes of a therapy dog trained to detect emotional distress. No statistics or employee surveys could illustrate it more powerfully than Duke's instinctive response. Dr. Blackwell sat frozen, his face a mask of conflicting emotions as hundreds of eyes focused on him. Catherine Wells leaned over, whispering something in his ear that made his jaw tighten further. The question facing Blackwell Medical Group today, Emma continued, her voice gaining strength, is not whether we have a culture problem. Duke has made that abundantly clear. The question is whether we have the courage to address it. The board has already taken the first step by creating my position and empowering me to implement substantive changes. But real transformation requires acknowledgement from leadership. The silence in the auditorium was deafening as all eyes remained fixed on Dr. Blackwell. After what seemed an eternity, he slowly rose to his feet. The room collectively held its breath, waiting for his response. Would it be denial, anger, or something no one expected? I believe, he said, his voice uncharacteristically subdued, that we should continue this discussion in private with the board. With respect, Dr. Blackwell, Emma replied firmly. The culture of silence and private damage control is precisely what needs to change. Your employees deserve transparency. For a moment, it seemed Dr. Blackwell might erupt in the kind of rage Martha had described so often to her sister. But then something unexpected happened. Duke, sensing the rising tension, did something he had never done before. He left Martha's side and approached Dr. Blackwell directly. The German Shepherd stopped just in front of the hospital CEO, sitting calmly, looking up with those intelligent amber eyes that seemed to see straight through the carefully constructed facade of power. There was no aggression in Duke's posture, no protective barrier being formed, just a direct, honest engagement that seemed to ask a simple question. Who are you really? Dr. Blackwell stared down at the dog, his expression inscrutable. The entire auditorium watched in stunned silence as something passed between man and animal, a moment of recognition that transcended words. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, Dr. Blackwell's rigid posture began to soften. He knelt, bringing himself to Duke's level, and hesitantly extended his hand. Duke sniffed it cautiously, then, to everyone's astonishment, gently placed his paw on Dr. Blackwell's outstretched palm. I believe, Catherine Wells said softly into the silence, we're witnessing something remarkable here, the beginning of authentic change. As Dr. Blackwell remained kneeling before Duke, something cracked in his carefully maintained facade. Those closest to him would later swear they saw moisture gathering in his eyes, the first public display of vulnerability from a man who had built an empire on the appearance of invulnerability. What no one in that auditorium could possibly know was that in that moment, Richard Blackwell wasn't seeing just a dog. He was seeing his late wife's favorite saying, framed on her bedside table throughout their marriage. The measure of a person is how they treat those who can do nothing for them. For the first time in years, Dr. Blackwell was truly seeing himself through others' eyes, and the revelation was shattering. The boardroom of Blackwell Medical Group had witnessed countless heated negotiations, strategic decisions, and power plays over the years, but never a scene quite like this. Dr. Richard Blackwell sat at the head of the massive walnut table, uncharacteristically silent as board members, executives, and the newly appointed wellness consultant presented evidence of systemic problems throughout his healthcare empire. Duke lay quietly beneath the table at Martha's feet. Following the dramatic demonstration in the auditorium, Dr. Blackwell had requested, not demanded, that Martha join the emergency board meeting, along with her sister, Alex, and, most surprisingly, Duke himself. The employee surveys reveal consistent patterns, Emma explained, distributing comprehensive reports. Staff across all 17 facilities report extreme stress, fear of retribution for reporting problems, and widespread burnout. Turnover rates are 43% above industry average, resulting in continuity of care issues and escalating recruitment costs. The board chairwoman, Eleanor Fitzgerald, reviewed the data with a deepening frown. These testimonials are deeply troubling. I avoid suggesting improvements because questioning anything is career suicide. We're treated as replaceable parts, not healthcare professionals. I love my patients but dread coming to work. Dr. Blackwell stared at the report before him, his expression unreadable. There's also the matter of Duke's viral videos, continued Emma. While they never explicitly identified Blackwell Medical Group, the connection is becoming impossible to ignore. 3 major healthcare publications have reached out for comments, and social media speculation is rampant. Our stock has declined 12%, added James Chun, the CFO. Investors are concerned about potential litigation, employee exodus, and reputational damage. Catherine Wells, who had been invited to join the meeting as a potential strategic partner, leaned forward. When I withdrew Meridian from acquisition talks, it wasn't simply because of what I witnessed at your home, Richard. It was because that interaction confirmed what I'd been hearing from former Blackwell employees for years. Dr. Blackwell's head snapped up. You've been speaking with my former staff? They've been speaking with us, Catherine corrected gently. Seeking employment with an organization they perceived as more aligned with healthcare values rather than pure profit metrics. The room fell silent as Dr. Blackwell absorbed this information. Martha, who had remained quiet throughout the meeting, watched her employer with a mixture of apprehension and something unexpected, hope. The man before her seemed different from the tyrannical figure who had berated her just days ago. His shoulders carried the same burden of authority, but the rigid certainty had somehow crumbled, leaving something more human in its place. Finally, Dr. Blackwell spoke, his voice lacking its usual commanding tone. What exactly are you proposing? A complete cultural transformation, Emma answered directly. Beginning with leadership accountability at every level. New feedback mechanisms that protect staff from retribution. Wellness programs that address burnout. And most importantly, a fundamental shift in how success is measured, prioritizing patient outcomes and staff well-being alongside financial performance. Alex, who had been observing his father carefully, added, It's what Mom would have wanted, Dad. It's what she always advocated for before she got sick. At the mention of his late wife, something changed in Dr. Blackwell's expression, a momentary crack in the facade that revealed raw pain beneath. Elizabeth was an idealist, he said softly, more to himself than the room. She believed healthcare could be both compassionate and sustainable. She was right, Catherine interjected. Meridian's employee-centered approach has resulted in lower turnover, higher patient satisfaction, and consistent profitability. Not explosive growth like Blackwell has pursued, but sustainable success that doesn't burn through staff. Dr. Blackwell's gaze drifted to Martha, then to Duke, who had moved to sit beside her, his intelligent eyes fixed on the hospital CEO. Martha, he said abruptly, I'd like to hear your perspective. You've been in my household for nearly 2 months. You've experienced my management style directly. The room fell silent. Martha straightened in her chair, summoning courage she scarcely knew she possessed. In all honesty, sir, working for you has been the most difficult experience of my professional life. Several board members shifted uncomfortably, but Dr. Blackwell nodded for her to continue. Every day, I've walked on eggshells, terrified of making the smallest mistake. No matter how perfectly I performed my duties, it was never enough. The constant criticism, the humiliation. Her voice faltered momentarily before strengthening. Duke was the only one who seemed to see what was happening. He protected me when no human would, or could. Dr. Blackwell flinched visibly at her words. But, Martha continued, surprising everyone, I also saw glimpses of someone else. The way you look at your wife's photograph when you think no one is watching. How you still keep her favorite books in your study. The fact that you anonymously pay for 3 children's cancer treatments at Blackwell Memorial. Dr. Blackwell's eyes widened. How did you? I dust your studies, sir. I've seen the letters from their parents, the medical reports you keep in your desk drawer. Martha met his gaze directly for perhaps the first time. There's a different person beneath the one you show the world. I think that's who Duke saw yesterday in the auditorium. The person you've been hiding, maybe even from yourself. The boardroom fell silent. Duke, sensing the emotional weight of the moment, stood and crossed to Dr. Blackwell's side, placing his head gently on the man's knee. Dr. Blackwell stared down at the dog, then slowly placed his hand on Duke's head. When Elizabeth was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, I promised her I would secure the future of our hospitals, that her legacy would be protected. His voice grew strained. The healthcare industry was changing, consolidation, insurance pressures, declining reimbursements. I convinced myself that survival required toughness, that her compassionate approach was a luxury we couldn't afford. He looked up at the faces around the table. I told myself I was protecting her dream by whatever means necessary. Instead, I corrupted it completely. It's not too late to change course, Richard, Catherine said quietly. That's why I'm here today. Not as an acquisition target or a competitor, but as a potential partner in transformation. Meridian's patient-centered model combined with Blackwell's clinical excellence, it could revolutionize healthcare in this region. The board would support such a partnership, Eleanor affirmed. And the structural changes Ms. Wilson has proposed. Dr. Blackwell's gaze returned to Duke, his hand still resting on the dog's head. It's remarkable, isn't it? This animal saw what I refused to acknowledge. He recognized the damage I was causing when I couldn't, or wouldn't, see it myself. That's why Duke became an internet sensation, Alex explained gently. People recognized something profound in his behavior, his ability to identify toxic dynamics and protect the vulnerable. He became a symbol for what many experience but few can address. Dr. Blackwell nodded slowly, then straightened in his chair. For a moment, Martha feared the familiar mask of authority would return, dismissing this moment of vulnerability as weakness. Instead, something entirely new appeared in his expression, resolution without hardness, authority tempered with humility. I would like to propose the following, he said, addressing the board. First, I will take a 3-month leave of absence to engage in executive coaching and leadership development. During this time, I suggest a transitional leadership team consisting of Catherine Wells, Alexander Blackwell, and our current COO. Murmurs of surprise rippled around the table. Second, I authorize the board to implement all recommendations in Ms. Wilson's report, with full funding and organizational support. Third, I propose we establish a joint committee with Meridian Healthcare to explore strategic partnership opportunities that preserve the strengths of both organizations while addressing our cultural challenges. He turned to Martha, his expression solemn. And finally, I owe you a personal apology, Ms. Wilson. My treatment of you was inexcusable. No business pressure, no personal grief justifies how I've behaved toward you and countless others. Martha nodded, too overwhelmed to speak. I've spent years making decisions focused solely on metrics and market share, Dr. Blackwell continued, addressing the entire room. I convinced myself that was leadership. A dog with more emotional intelligence than I've displayed in years has shown me otherwise. Duke, as if understanding his role in this transformation, wagged his tail gently, his amber eyes never leaving Dr. Blackwell's face. As the meeting concluded, board members filed out with a strange mixture of shock and cautious optimism. Catherine Wells and Eleanor Fitzgerald remained behind, deep in conversation about transition plans. Alex stood by the windows, texting updates to the digital marketing team about Duke's next public appearance, now with a dramatically different storyline than originally planned. Martha lingered uncertainly, unsure of her position now that everything had changed. Dr. Blackwell approached her, Duke following attentively at his heels. I understand your sister's apartment has an extra bedroom, he said quietly. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable staying there during your recovery, rather than returning to the quarters above the garage. Yes, sir. That would be appreciated. And when you're fully recovered, I hope you'll consider a different position, helping to develop Duke's therapy program at Blackwell Memorial. Your connection with him is undeniable, and your perspective would be invaluable. Martha blinked in surprise. I'm not qualified for such work, Dr. Blackwell. On the contrary, he replied with unexpected gentleness. You may be the most qualified person I know. He glanced down at Duke, who had settled between them, no longer as a barrier, but as a bridge. Sometimes wisdom comes from unexpected sources. It's about time I started listening. As Martha left the boardroom with Duke and Alex, she felt a weight lifting that she'd carried for longer than she could remember. The burden of being invisible, of having her dignity dependent on someone else's whims. Behind her, through the partially open door, she heard Catherine Wells say something that made her pause momentarily. You know, Richard, true redemption isn't about one dramatic gesture. It's about the daily work of becoming someone different, someone better. Dr. Blackwell's response was too quiet to hear, but the humility in his tone was unmistakable. Martha continued walking, Duke padding faithfully beside her, both of them stepping toward a future neither could have imagined just days before. A future where barriers became bridges, and even the deepest wounds could begin to heal. 6 months later, the grounds of Oak Ridge Manor bustled with activity as volunteers in matching blue t-shirts set up white tents across the expansive lawn. What had once been the exclusive domain of one powerful man had transformed into the site of the first annual Blackwell Meridian Therapy Dog Training Center fundraiser. Colorful banners featuring Duke's now famous silhouette fluttered in the early autumn breeze, and the sound of barking dogs mingled with laughter and conversation. Martha Wilson, dressed in casual slacks and a professional blazer rather than a housekeeper's uniform, stood at the center of it all, clipboard in hand as she directed volunteers. A small pin on her lapel identified her as Program Director, a title that still felt surreal after decades of service positions. The agility course needs to move farther from the refreshment tents, she instructed a group of college volunteers. We want to make sure the dogs aren't too distracted during their demonstrations. Yes, Ms. Wilson, they responded with the respect her position now commanded, hurrying to rearrange the equipment. Duke trotted faithfully at Martha's side, a blue therapy dog vest identifying him as the program's founding canine. At 3.5 years old, he had reached his prime, confident, calm, and still remarkably intuitive about human emotions. Behind them, 6 other German shepherds in training followed their handlers across the lawn, each dog selected for their emotional sensitivity and protective instincts. Emma approached, looking professional in her Blackwell Meridian corporate attire. As Chief Ethics Officer for the newly merged healthcare system, she had spearheaded the organizational transformation alongside Catherine Wells and a reformed board of directors. The media are starting to arrive, Emma informed her sister. Catherine's handling the business reporters, but the human interest journalists want to speak with you and Duke. Are you ready for that? Martha took a deep breath. As ready as I'll ever be. Where's Alex? He's usually better with the press than I am. Setting up the main stage with Dr. Abernathy from Johns Hopkins. They're finalizing the presentation on the neurological research. Emma squeezed her sister's shoulder supportively. You've got this, Martha. No one tells Duke's story better than you. As if on cue, a sleek Tesla pulled up the driveway. Dr. Richard Blackwell emerged, looking noticeably different from the imposing figure who had once ruled Oak Ridge Manor with cold authority. 6 months of intensive therapy, leadership coaching, and genuine self-reflection had softened his sharp edges. He wore casual slacks and a quarter-zip sweater rather than his customary tailored suit, and the perpetual frown lines around his mouth had relaxed. Duke's reaction to Dr. Blackwell's arrival was perhaps the most telling evidence of transformation. Where once the dog had positioned himself protectively between Martha and her employer, he now trotted forward to greet Dr. Blackwell with a friendly wag of his tail. Good morning, Dr. Blackwell said, kneeling to scratch behind Duke's ears, a gesture that would have been unthinkable 6 months ago. Everything looks wonderful, Martha. You've done an exceptional job organizing this event. Thank you, Dr. Blackwell, Martha replied, still not entirely comfortable with their new dynamic despite months of gradual change. The volunteer response exceeded our expectations. We have over 200 people helping today. Richard, please, he reminded her gently. We're colleagues now, not employer and employee. The reminder hung in the air between them, a bridge not yet fully crossed after years of rigid hierarchy. Martha nodded, managing a small smile. The first tour group arrives at 10. Would you like to join me for the opening remarks? Actually, I was hoping to help with setup first. Put me to work wherever I'm needed. He gestured toward the volunteers busily arranging chairs. I've spent too many years giving orders. It's time I remembered what it's like to take them. Martha's surprise must have shown on her face because Dr. Blackwell, Richard, smiled ruefully. 6 months of therapy has made it abundantly clear that my leadership style was compensation for deeper insecurities. My therapist would be proud of me for admitting that out loud. Before Martha could respond, Alex jogged over to join them, his face lighting up at the sight of his father. The months of working together on Duke's program had gradually healed wounds between father and son that had once seemed permanent. Dad, perfect timing. We need someone to help with the donor reception tent, and your charm with potential benefactors is still unmatched. Alex grinned, the easy confidence of their renewed relationship evident in his teasing tone. Careful, son, Richard replied with a wry smile. I'm working on my humility, but I'm not immune to flattery yet. As father and son walked toward the reception area, engrossed in conversation, Martha felt a surge of emotion watching their easy interaction. The transformation in both men and in her own life still seemed miraculous at times. Emma came to stand beside her. Quite a difference from the day you started working here, isn't it? Sometimes I can hardly believe it, Martha admitted. From being humiliated for a Southern accent to directing a nationally recognized program. With a 6-figure salary and benefits, Emma added with a satisfied smile. Don't forget that part. Martha laughed softly. The money is nice, but it's the purpose that matters most. Seeing these dogs help people who feel powerless, just like I did, that's the real reward. Duke nudged Martha's hand with his nose, seeming to agree with her assessment. Together, they continued their rounds of the event space, greeting volunteers and checking final preparations. Near the main entrance, a display chronicled Duke's journey from shelter dog to therapy animal to viral sensation to the inspiration for a nationwide program. Videos played on loop showing Duke's protective behaviors, though now the formerly blurred faces were visible. Martha and Dr. Blackwell had both consented to sharing their story publicly as part of the program's mission. By mid-morning, Oak Ridge Manor had transformed from a private estate into a vibrant community space. Families with children, healthcare professionals, and corporate sponsors mingled on the lawns where Duke had once stood silent watch over Martha. The German Shepherd himself had become something of a celebrity, patiently allowing admirers to pet him and pose for photographs. For the opening ceremony, Martha found herself on stage beside Alex, Emma, Catherine Wells, and Richard Blackwell, equals united by a shared mission rather than divided by hierarchy. Duke sat calmly at her feet as she stepped to the microphone. Welcome to the first annual Blackwell Meridian Therapy Dog Training Center event, she began, her voice steady despite the hundreds of faces watching her. Many of you know Duke's story from social media or news coverage, but today I want to share what isn't visible in those viral videos, the story of transformation. Martha glanced at Dr. Blackwell, who nodded encouragingly. 6 months ago, I was a housekeeper in this very mansion, subject to a toxic work environment that left me feeling powerless and invisible. She gestured to Duke. This extraordinary dog recognized what humans couldn't or wouldn't address. His protective instincts not only shielded me from harm, but ultimately sparked a transformation that extended far beyond one household. She continued, describing how Duke's viral videos had raised awareness about workplace bullying, how the Blackwell Meridian merger had revolutionized their corporate culture, and how the therapy dog program was now training canines to support emotional well-being in hospitals, schools, and workplaces across the country. The most profound transformation, however, Martha said, her voice softening, has been in human hearts. In my own life, finding my voice and purpose. In organizational culture, prioritizing compassion alongside competence. And she glanced at Richard Blackwell. In the journey of one leader who had the courage to confront his own behavior when confronted by the truth, even when that truth came from a dog. Dr. Blackwell stepped forward, taking his turn at the microphone. I spent decades building a healthcare empire focused on metrics and market share, he acknowledged, his voice carrying a humility that once would have been unimaginable. I mistook harshness for strength and compassion for weakness. It took a German shepherd with more emotional intelligence than I possessed to show me what true leadership looks like. He turned to Martha, genuine respect in his eyes. And it took the courage of someone I had undervalued and mistreated to hold up a mirror I couldn't ignore. Today, Blackwell Meridian Healthcare has the lowest staff turnover and highest patient satisfaction in our history. Proof that ethical treatment and business success are not opposing forces, but complementary strengths. As the ceremony concluded and the crowd dispersed to various demonstrations and exhibits, Martha found herself standing beside the rose garden that had been Elizabeth Blackwell's pride and joy. Duke sat beside her, his warm presence a constant comfort even though she no longer needed his protection. Richard approached, hands in his pockets, his expression contemplative as he gazed at his late wife's roses. Elizabeth would have loved today, he said quietly. This program, this partnership between humans and animals to create more compassionate environments. It embodies everything she believed in. She sounds like she was a remarkable woman, Martha replied. She was. Richard's voice held the softness of genuine grief, not the hardened bitterness that had driven him after her death. For years after losing her, I convinced myself that I was honoring her memory by building an empire. In reality, I was betraying everything she valued most. He bent to stroke Duke's head gently. It took this extraordinary animal to remind me of her most important lesson, that how we treat the most vulnerable reveals who we truly are. Martha nodded, understanding flowing between them, no longer employer and employee, but two people connected by a shared journey of transformation. The work continues, she said simply. Yes, Richard agreed. It does. As guests filtered through the gardens and demonstrations continued across the grounds, Duke remained attentive but relaxed. His mission evolved, but not ended. No longer needed as a protective barrier, he had become something perhaps more powerful, a bridge between worlds once divided by power and privilege, a living reminder that empathy could transform even the most entrenched patterns of behavior. Later that evening, as sunset painted Oak Ridge Manor in golden light, Martha sat on the patio that had once been forbidden territory for household staff. Duke lay at her feet, tired but content after a day of meaningful work. Around them, the remnants of celebration, empty chairs, program booklets, and the occasional lost name tag, testified to the day's success. Tomorrow, she would return to her new apartment in the city, a comfortable space she shared with Emma, filled with books and plants and photographs of family. Duke would accompany her, as he did everywhere now, his therapy dog certification making him welcome in spaces a pet would not be. But tonight, in this peaceful moment between what had been and what would be, Martha simply sat with her hand resting on Duke's warm fur, marveling at how a silent witness had sparked a transformation that words alone could never have achieved. Throughout Oak Ridge Manor, now the official headquarters of the Blackwell Meridian Therapy Dog Training Center, lights glowed in welcome rather than intimidation. Where once a mansion had stood as a monument to one man's power, a community had taken root, guided by the simple wisdom of a dog who understood, better than any human, the healing power of genuine connection. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, and if you watched until here, comment, "I watched until here," and share your opinion about this story. Oh, and don't forget to watch the next video that appears on the end screen. It's very exciting.